tonight, hopefully you had some time to really sit down and reflect on the tale of two things. One, that you can be excellent at whatever you're doing, your job, whatever your career is, or whatever you're choosing to be great at externally. But also you can lean into being something great internally by just taking a few moments every day to check in on you and really pour into you. Now, let's continue to hear how Nick has poured into himself, but also continues to pour into the Rise community. So we left off, you were grade level chair, and that's when you had this epiphany of the power of both, the power of being both great in the classroom, but also being great to yourself and to your friends. What else happened after that? Did you continue with being grade level chair? Did you expand and go up in your leadership?
Yeah, so I was very content where I was. I really enjoyed the team that we had in the eighth grade, the culture that we had built, the work that we were doing. But there was still kind of like this nagging feeling of, maybe Memphis isn't forever. Maybe I'm going to move back to Philly. Maybe I'll move to DC where other people I know are, as whatever. But I always found like a reason, like I would always hold out on the decision until the very last moment. And be like, all right, one more year in Memphis. And then, so year 3, year 4, and then we have a global pandemic. We have COVID. And so the March 2020, right? Everyone goes home. I think it was Friday the 13th, actually. It was like the first day right before spring. Actually, I remember this. Yeah. March 13th, right before spring break. Everyone's like, oh, it's 2 weeks. We'll get an extra week at the end of spring break and then we'll be back. And then we weren't back. And so it was unacceptable for me that was going to be the end of my journey, that was going to be the end of my TFA / teaching experience. So signed back on for one more year, virtual school, and then eventually back in the classroom. And that was one of the first times where preparing to go back to in-person teaching was one of the first times where I really was like, okay, what is next? I actually thinking about what the plan is at the end of the school year instead of waiting for the end of the school year to make a decision. Jack Volsteck, who was my principal when I first joined, he later moved up to be the high school principal and executive director. I had a conversation with him and my middle school principal, Gus Connolly. Big shout out to Gus Connolly, still the middle school principal at Memphis Rise, still the executive director, hugely impactful on me and the work that I was able to do there. I was very honest with them about kind of where I was at and the fact that I felt like my time in the classroom was coming to a close. And Jack, he had invested a lot in me, and so he gave me the opportunity to, he essentially let me know that the high school operations director position was going to be opening up and that it might be something that I'd be interested in. And so it was like another light bulb moment for me. It was like, okay, I'm out of the classroom, but I'm still in this school. I'm working with this community that I really care about. I get to see all these kids and these families that I've gotten to know for the past 5 years. And I still get to feel like attached and a part of the mission that we have been working towards here. And also I have been really interested in all of the behind the scenes work. I had gotten a taste of that with stepping into leadership for those 3 years with a grade level team and kind of being a decision maker and like having a small peek behind the curtain and things like that. And I knew that was something I was really interested in learning more about. So it felt like the right fit. I was lucky enough to get, hired for that role and was able to step into that. And it was an amazing experience. It was a lot of the operations work that goes into supporting a teacher in their day-to-day job. And that is when I would try to describe that job to someone who didn't work in a school. I would often say that, my elevator pitch would be, I try to do the work to make sure that teachers only have to worry about stepping foot in the classroom and being able to teach the way that they want to teach. Technology stuff, compliance with XYZ, whatever it may be. Like my goal was to make sure that on a day-to-day level, the school stayed afloat, that the ship didn't sink. And then over the course of that year, the high school principal, Jack, he let me know that it was going to be his last year as principal. And I was shocked to find out that they had they wanted me to put my hat in the ring for that job. And so after a lot of indecision and a lot of back and forth, it was just kind of too good of an opportunity to pass up. There was a lot of, and even over the 2 years that I was the high school principal, there was a lot of imposter syndrome. It's like I was leading, close to 50 adults in the building. I had teachers that had way more classroom experience than I did. Other leaders that I was technically in charge of that had way more leadership experience than I did. But it felt right at times too. It was certainly the hardest thing I've ever done, and without a doubt, that is certainly the hardest I've ever had to work. The hardest I've ever wanted to work too. Not to say that I wasn't motivated or empowered when I was a classroom teacher or the operations director, but just understanding the. I was acutely aware of the responsibility that I had as a building leader and as a school leader for 450 students, that they're not going to get these years back, and I need to make sure that their day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year experience is the greatest that they could possibly want and hope for, not just for ensuring that they are set up for whatever comes after high school, regardless of whether it's 2-year, 4-year, trade school, military, workforce, but also that they're getting the most out of their high school experience. I look back on high school like fondly, and a big part of that is because of the teachers that I had and like the friends that I had. But like hindsight 2020, it was because of the planning and prep of our leadership at the school that put all these programs and opportunities in our face and in our laps. And for a very long time, I took for granted that it was just like, oh yeah, that's high school. You get these things. But I wanted to do my best to elevate that for all of my students over those 2 years as well. Certainly like the most, the heaviest the weight has ever been were those 2 years, in a good way.
And so I think that definitely is true, and I have heard that from people who are able to step into various roles, from teaching to school leadership, that you do get this sense of that peek behind the curtain of seeing how the sausage is made, and really realize, wow, in some ways, like, wow, this is incredible, but wow, this is a lot that goes into this that I didn't consider. And that then leads to either like stepping more into it or pulling away or doing something different. What did that do for you? Did you continue with principalship, or did you decide to do something different outside of that?
So after about halfway through my second year, I kind of knew that I had I'd given all I had to give to some extent. And I knew that I didn't know. I felt like I was doing good work. I felt like I was good at what I was doing. But my heart wasn't in it the way that it was when I first started. And I think that especially for a building leader, a school leader, like your heart has to be in it 110%. That is what's going to push you to do the best work possible, like when you have no more left to give. And so I knew that kind of like my time was coming to a close. I tried to give my leadership team, my executive director, as much heads up as possible, help them onboard people, find whoever they needed to fill that role. But June 2024, I stepped away from the classroom, stepped away from Memphis Rise Academy, stepped away from schools. And it was a really agonizing decision. It was really, really tough. And especially those first couple of weeks after graduation, I was like, man, did I make the right choice? I still don't know. Hindsight being what it is, I know that I made the right choice now. And that while I certainly could have gone back, and I feel like I could have done a perfectly adequate job at the school, my teachers deserve more. My students deserve more. They deserve someone who is fully bought in and invested the way that a leader should be in that space. So,
And I have so much respect for you, because it takes a true leader to step back and reflect on the impact they're making in real time, and then also think about the ripple effect of that, how that will happen in the future, what can happen. And some people will say, I'll stay and I'll just do the status quo for whatever reason. And some people say, actually, no, I need to do more, and that more might mean I need to step back and out of the way, I need to step away
Yeah.
and go do something different. So I have so much respect for you because that's a true leader to do the reflection. And I think in Teach for America, at least my experience of being a core member and being an alum and just being in this TFA bubble, as we like to say, you always have an opportunity to stop and reflect.
Yeah.
And think about you and think about how you're doing, especially when you get yourself really sitting on the reason why we all joined, which was one day all children will have access to excellent education. And sometimes people think one day all children will have access to excellent education means I have to just stay in the classroom or I have to just stay in a K through 12 brick and mortar traditional experience to get that. And what I found through my journey is that there's so many possibilities of that vision for one day, and it's going to take all of us stepping in to make that happen. What is your current vision of one day, and are you currently living that?
Yeah, I like to think so. I like to think that I still am. And a big part of that is because of the work I now get to do with my new job, which is with an organization called Kira Learning. Um, I, I think that when I first moved to Memphis, I was kind of like a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, all of my experience with education at that point had been pretty sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up in a upper middle class, predominantly white neighborhood at a school that was not wanting for money or technology. You know, I piloted the international baccalaureate program at my school. Even in college, when I started tutoring and then doing this Model UN program, you know, that was with a pretty well off, predominantly white Catholic school in the city. And so moving to Memphis, conceptually, theoretically, I knew that there were underserved communities. I knew that there were students that were not receiving the education, the quality of education that they deserve or need to be successful. And it wasn't until I really stepped into, it was summer school to some extent, which with the TFA summer program. But even then, working with really small pockets of kids who, at the time, were like, oh, like they failed school. Of course, they have to be here to do summer school. But it was really my first year working with that first 8th grade class at Memphis Rise Academy, and then meeting the families. I was like, oh wow, like we could have a whole separate hour-long podcast about public versus charter versus private and all of that, but it really says something to me that I'll caveat that this isn't every school in Memphis, but that we were a school that parents saw something in us, that they said, we are not satisfied with the offering that we have within our community. This is a school where we see that they're doing the work, they're doing good work, and that this is where I want my student to go for whatever XYZ reason. And that parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles would take the time to come and put their kids on the wait list or enroll their kids, get them there, drive them 25 minutes from South Memphis when there's not a bus, something like that. And I think that was a big part of what informed my why and like my vision, where it's like that, like I was so happy to be at a place where people felt inspired to bring their kids there, but it spoke to this underlying issue first and foremost, that they do not have a public or even local offering that they feel like is doing service for their kids. And I took for granted that my high school or my middle school was a 15-minute drive away from me, and I wanted for nothing there. And then I realized that it's like we have people in positions of privilege and people in positions of power have an obligation, and a moral obligation to lift up those around us and to serve those around us first and foremost, I think. And when I moved here and I kind of saw, like, firsthand, not just conceptually, but like really firsthand, that there were not good options, that schools were not good. It was like a rude awakening in a lot of ways. And so having the ability, and like what I would consider my mission, not my mission, I should say, what I consider what the goal should be, was that we all work in such a way that the offerings in our neighborhoods are the best offerings that a community could want.
Right.
I think something I really believed in, and even now that I don't work in a school anymore, I still think is really important, is that schools are more than just a place of learning. It's like a community center first and foremost, and it's a place where parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, should feel comfortable coming and being and existing. They feel like they're a part of the process. I think that the best educational outcomes for kids are informed by the triangle. The kids are at the top, but they're supported by a base of like a really strong and invested teachers and like an invested family as well, regardless of what your family looks like. And so I hope that we all work towards a mission of, in the moment, providing the best resources that we can and the best opportunities for the kids in our lives and our community members, while also being cognizant of the fact that maybe what's around us isn't great, but we need to be working on repairing that and investing in that, and not just moving to a different area or redirecting funds to more successful parts just because their test scores are better. I hope that one day we all live in a version of this city where we are all happy and feel like the schools, the public schools very specifically, in the communities that we live in, are a viable, good option for our kids and for like the young people in our city.
I think that's so important, and I think that's a really just interesting take on it, and an interesting take on the power of like, we have to have amazing charter schools, we have to have amazing communities, we have to have amazing public schools, we have to have neighborhood schools. We have to have all of those things all working in tandem, and almost providing children with an opportunity and parents an opportunity, so that if you were at a buffet, pick what you want. It's diversity.
Yes.
It's diversity in all of it, but everyone that you go to is delicious. It's really catered to you. It's quality. It's going to set you up for whatever version of success you're trying to get to. I think that that would be amazing. So the job you currently do now, though, is that living, does that align with this vision of one day that you have?
I think so. I think so. I am a customer success manager for Kira Learning. Kira Learning it's mainly, kind of like an ed tech company. And currently what we do is we provide computer science and AI education for classrooms, for schools, for school districts and things like that. With the main goal and vision of, helping students in primarily middle school and high school learn about and be excited about computer science, about coding, about computer literacy, AI advancements, ethical use of AI, things like that. Technology is exponential. It's like the more technology we have, the faster it gets, the more that it is integrated into our lives. And coding is just like Spanish, French, German is another language that I think every year we see that is so important that all people kind of understand the basics, I think we take for granted a lot of the time that younger people, because they are born with technology, that they have an inherent understanding of it.
Right, that's the point.
And I think that something that I've found is that, people that I would say are closer to my age, where computers were not necessarily new, but they were still they were still more basic, let's say. We were required to take a typing class. We learned how to use the Microsoft Suite products and, very basic things. And we take for granted that kids know how to do that stuff because they're born with it.
Yeah.
And the reality is they're really good with the two thumbs and they're not so good with the whole hands.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I want something that I think is increasingly true is that we need to be reinvesting in computer literacy for young people because it's not going away. And we need to make sure that they speak the language of computers as well, so that they are able to use these incredibly powerful tools to build whatever they want to. Whether it be writing a computer program to automate something in your house using RFID scanners or things like that. you writing a code for a project in class to help crunch data or run numbers or things like that. And even on a very basic level, like being able to internalize like a program and understand like what are we supposed to do and how am I going to maximize this and have it work for me in I think really powerful ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's so just it's delicious because it's almost like when you have a very like I love desserts and I think about how great like we always talk about the icing or the cherry, but it's those little bitty elements sometimes, the little bitty cream inside, the little bitty notes of whatever flavors in there that really makes it pop. And I think technology, like you just talked about, I think we think, oh, kids know what a cake is. They know they like chocolate cake, but they might not understand all the elements that go into it so they can then produce it themselves, create their own versions of chocolate cake and different. Y'all, I'm hungry right now. Okay.
Yeah.
A dessert. I definitely want some dessert right now. But I definitely that's when you were speaking to me, which is I was seeing a child. Yes, I think about my nieces. I think about my nephews and just my cousins who can text, who can get on there and get on iChat or different things. But if you ask them to work PowerPoint or something of that nature, or even now, I even see kids using Chat GPT, older children using Chat GPT or different things, but they don't understand the mechanisms behind it. So again, we find resources to give them information, but don't teach them don't teach them how to build. So if something happens, heaven forbid, something happens where everything crashes and they have to go back to the basics, they at least have that. They at least know how to do it.
Definitely.
I think that's so important. I'm excited. I think so. How can people who want to know more about your current role in your current company, how can they get more information about it?
Give us a Google, Kira, Kira Learning. You'll know it's Kira because it's a really fun purple octopus is our mascot. I was actually the first Tennessee employee for Kira Learning. They're primarily headquartered in New York, LA, and San Francisco. But Tennessee is our largest client. Tennessee, there's a lot that we could say about leadership and politics around education in Tennessee. One of the things that I think was a smart decision by leadership in the past couple of years was the understanding the importance of computer science and requiring that as a high school graduation requirement for I think it's going to be the class of 2029 will be the first class that has to have this computer science graduation component. And they invested in Kira to be a provider of that. And so one of the things that's really cool is that all public schools in the state of Tennessee, primarily middle school and high schools, actually have access to Kira Learning and our courses online for select courses for free. So pretty much any student, any school has the ability to go and take a Kira Learning course on computer science and all these other things. Of course, that there's a lot that has to be done about leadership has to approve it. You got to have the technology for it. You have access to laptops, and that's not always a given. But it's like we want to make ourselves available. We want to make ourselves easy to access and not just. I don't want you to feel like you are talking to like a support robot through a chat. It's me. It's Nick Fortunato. I'm here to support you. Next week I'm actually going to Chattanooga to be at there's this big tech conference for the state computer science stuff, and so we're gonna go there. We're gonna make sure all the teachers there know that Kira Learning is here to support you. You have our programs for free through the state, and we just want to make ourselves available and make sure everyone understands that we are here to invest in Tennessee. We're here to invest in Memphis. Memphis is our largest user base in the state, which is, I think, is so incredible as a Memphian. I think I can call myself that now.
I'll let you call yourself that.
Appreciate it. So yeah, it's been a really incredible opportunity. I didn't know when I left being a principal. I gave myself a month off to just mentally and physically recover. And then I didn't really know what came next. I knew that education was something that I wanted to continue in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of what I was applying for was education tangential, ed tech companies, learning and development roles with corporations that were very specifically trying to invest more in their education departments and things like that. But yeah, Kira was just something that I didn't really know about. I have long felt the importance of computer science was kind of like being left at the wayside in Tennessee. And so when Kira Learning, when I saw this opportunity came along, it was something I was just so excited about. And it's a company that I feel like has invested in me in a really like beautiful way, and they've taken a lot of they took a chance on me. They took a lot of faith, having no real corporate experience, so to speak. But I think that that's something that's really powerful, that for any teachers or educators that are looking to make a transition outside of the classroom, it can be really daunting and it can be really nerve-wracking when you look at a job application and you feel like you don't fit the requirements, or you feel like you don't have the work experience that these positions are looking for. And I would say, forget that. Apply anyway. I think some people talk about it being a numbers game. You just got to throw something out the wall until it sticks. But I also think that being a teacher, being a school leader, you have so many cross-transferable skills that you don't even really realize, because you only think about it through the lens of being a teacher. And when, going back to like the very beginning of this conversation, excuse me, I talked a lot about like community and the community that I built. And I was lucky enough to have very, very near and dear friends that had left teaching and had gone to grad school or things like that. And I was able to have these, or had just transitioned out into a nonprofit job. And, leverage your community, leverage the people around you. Talk about how your skills are cross-transferable. Figure out the lingo. We talk about code switching sometimes. And there really was this sense of code switching between the language of education and corporate language. And it's still something I'm figuring out. It's still something that I feel like I need to like Google terms, or I have like this running Google Doc of acronyms that I keep. And I'm like, oh yeah, TITA, yeah, okay, I understand that. QBRs, yeah, sure. But I had to leverage, and I really had to take the time to continue to be a learner. Like learning never ends. I firmly believe that. I'm a lifelong learner, as corny as that is. So I had to learn how to market myself,
right,
not as a teacher, but as like a potential corporate peon, corporate person. And it was tough. Like there were interviews that I feel like did not go well with other jobs. But I think Kira is a company that like really values the classroom experience that people have, especially because our clients are students and teachers. Those who our users are. And so it's been a really fun experience for me, learning the program, learning the software, and like putting my student hat back on, being like, oh, I'm a student now. Let me go through and actually learn how to code in Python. Oh, great. This is so cool. Let me go be a teacher now. Like, as a teacher, how would I go about using this? Where are the discrepancies that I find? Where are the points of access that need to be improved so that people have an easier time using this product? It's been really fun. And I'm excited to, travel all over the state and to visit all these school districts and to visit classrooms. But and I really do believe this, I don't think I would have this job now, excuse me, if not for the experience that I had as a classroom teacher, if not for the experience I had as a school leader, and if not for the investment from Teach for America Memphis in me right at the very beginning, to make me feel confident enough to be able to do this work, period.
I did not pay him for that, but I think all that is true. I think all that is 100% just spot on, and I appreciate that, because a lot of times we forget that it is through the sacrifices and the support of others that we're able to be able to stand proudly and happily and just boldly. And so I appreciate that. And I think we are proud of you. We are so thankful for you. And so as we wrap up, I know you just gave a lot of great advice to teachers. I think that was just really spot on in terms of ways to think about, if you are a current core member or an alum, on how to move somewhere next. I think that was really great. Is there anything else that you would say in terms of advice for either a core member or alumni before we close out?
Yeah, couple things. Don't wait until March to make a decision. It's okay to know that you're going to leave at the end of the year, that doesn't mean that you need to give less. If anything, I found myself giving more because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like going back to that idea of leaving it all out on the court.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it's also okay not to know what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the reason I never felt trapped. I want to say that first and foremost. But I think the reason why I was sometimes scared to leave or to do something else was because I didn't necessarily have a vision of what came next.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we often, you know, especially when I was working at the high school, we drill this narrative of like, what's the path? You know, it's like you have to have a vision for yourself. And my vision kind of stopped after being a principal. You know, I never saw myself doing that ever. You know, and so when I found myself in that role and then I was getting ready to leave, I was like, wow, like I really don't know what I'm gonna do from here. And so I would say be open to the universe, be open to the possibilities. It's okay not to have a path, but that doesn't mean that you should be complacent in waiting for something to come along. You know, you get what you give. You know, you gotta put it out to get it back. You know, it was a lot of, you know, I found myself, you know, sitting at, you know, the city leadership office, you know, on this floor, you know, talking with, you know, Teach 901 folks. You know, I was talking with like the city leadership leaders, you know, talking about, you know, long-term education visions for Memphis. And the purpose of that wasn't to, you know, get a job there, but it was to, you know, make connections and like build a larger community outside of the school and the alumni and the people I've met through that. I would also say, like, look for opportunities to give back. Like, if you have the capacity to give, do so. Whether it be monetarily, whether it be with your time, whether it be other resources that you have available to yourself. That ultimately, I think, is one of the greatest things you can do because you're investing in your community, you're investing in the people around you, and that's going to come back to you. And you're not going to know how it's going to come back. Something that my lovely wife always would remind me was that something was right around the corner. I just didn't know and could really not know what it was going to be. And ultimately, for me, that ended up being Cura Learning, and I'm so incredibly thankful for that. But it's okay not to know. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to kind of jump into the unknown to some extent. Have faith in yourself. Continue to invest in yourself. Continue to be a learner. Yeah, just be open to what Memphis and what the universe kind of puts in front of you.
I couldn't have said it better. I think all of that was just spot on. You were actually speaking to me and making me think and really have a reflection moment. So I appreciate that. I was just like, yes, step into the unknown. Yes, you don't know what's coming around the corner. I just think that was really brilliant. And I just appreciate it. And so with that, I'm gonna leave you marinating on that, you all, because there were so many gems just now. And so if you need to, like I'm gonna do, go back, rewind, listen to it again, listen to it a couple times, and then journal. See what comes up for you. See what comes up as you are listening to that amazing advice, because all of that was spot on. And I think if you are in a space where you're trying to figure out what's next, or you just want to take a moment to just catch yourself, to just again pour into you, do that. Because look what happened. Look what happened when Nick took that month off, took a moment to relax, catch his breath, and look what he's doing now. Amazing work, an amazing alum. I'm just so proud of you. Just an amazing, beautiful person. So if you have anything that you want to say or share, please feel free to reach out to me or James. We love to have feedback. We love to hear from you all and hear how we can better support you, our alumni community, and also people who are just watching to learn more about Teach for America. We want to know what questions you have so we can follow up and support you. And again, if you want to know about Cura Learning, you can go ahead and find the purple octopus, right?
Yes, yep.
And that will be, when you Google that, you'll see that, and then there you go to get that information, because I think that's an amazing organization as well. All right, thank y'all. Have a good one. We'll see you next episode.